Coming up, a Sad Styles production.
Hello and welcome. My name is Mike Aaronworth, signing on to the Sign Off, a Frameworth podcast for yet another week. And this is our first two-parter, so I'm excited to be joined in studio once again by Gus Badali. If you haven't heard part one of our interview, absolutely fascinating stuff. We literally realized midway through recording that we just had too many questions and stories to tell. We had to split it up into a second one, that we being myself and Brian Aaronworth, president of Frameworth, who is joining me as well, my loyal
What
co-host.
I would recommend is pause now, go back and listen to episode 1.
Absolutely.
Because it's going to bring you up to date. Like, we were so enthralled with episode 1, we just wanted to keep Gus here and finish the story. And I'm sure it'd take 3 and 4 episodes to finish the story, but
we've had a lot of good guests on this podcast. But Gus, I think you're taking it as one of the most interesting storytellers. The ways in which, like, my fascination, as I mentioned in the first episode, comes with the background workings of the league. I love to hear the locker room stories, sure, but I love the perspective of the people who are kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes. And you know, a lot of the times when you hear that term, pulling the strings, you think there's almost something evil or manipulative about it, but that's not you. You got into this industry looking to help out kids who were trying to get into this world and put them on the best direction. As you mentioned on the last episode, not because you wanted something out of it. You know, we talked about John Tonelli and how he made less money on his NHL contract because you thought that would be better for him. You know, less money for him means less money for you. And I'm so excited to see how that process played out with some of the other names that you've dealt with. Gus Badali, as we mentioned on the last episode, famous ambassador and agent to the likes of Wayne Gretzky. You've worked with Mario Lemieux. You've worked with Paul Coffey.
And Dale Howardchuk.
And Dale Howardchuk is another famous and popular one as well. Yeah. Tons of, like, it was one of those, you know, when I'm thinking of the players to name, it's impossible not to leave a lot out because you have had relationships with a lot of these players. Now, we left off talking about the initial signing and contract dispute between John Tonelli, the NHL, and the WHA, his eventual move to the NHL, and then your continued relationship with him, the budding relationship with the NHL after a lawsuit dispute with Harold Ballard and a lot of the other players. Like, the summary is too much. As my dad said, go back and listen. But Gus, let's get back into it. I'd love to hear how this story continued. You know, after your dealings with John Tonelli, this would have been about 78 or so. At this point in time, there was a pretty famous kid growing up in the ranks by the name of Wayne Gretzky. You know, a lot of people may wonder how you initially came to know him when he showed up on your radar. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, everything again, by accident. Gordie Howe became a friend, which I was lucky to be.
Sure.
He had a son that wanted to play in Toronto. He asked me if my son Murray was going to play in Toronto, would you billet him? Yeah. I said, well, I'd talk to my wife, and she said it was fine with her. Mm-hmm. I already had 3 boys at home.
Sure. Billeting, for those who don't know, because I actually was unfamiliar, that's just the term for you essentially providing room and board for the player who would be coming playing.
Who's coming from out of town. Yeah.
Right. And they went to school in the area where we lived.
Yeah.
Murray billeted with us. And Seneca College wasn't very far away, and it wasn't far for me to go to watch him play.
Sure.
So even though I was really busy watching a lot of other players from Tuesday to Sunday, Murray was playing on a Monday, and I thought, I got to support Murray, you know, to go on to watch him play. So I would go, and I heard the name Wayne Gretzky, but I'd never seen him play. So I went another Monday to see Murray play again, and Gretzky's standing out. And I went to thirds, and I thought, this kid's a pretty good hockey player. He's small, but I'm telling you, he's dynamite.
At this point, was he as dominant, or was he just noticeably better, not quite the great one yet?
He wasn't quite the great one yet. However, after the third time, I knew the general manager, Sam McMaster. So I said hello to him, and you know, I said, how do you think Murray's doing? Oh, Murray's doing pretty good. You know, Gus, he's I don't think he's an NHLer, but
sure.
You know, you could tell that, unfortunately. Murray wasn't going to be an NHLer, but his effort and everything and his pedigree, you never know. So he says, well, Walter Gretzky is here tonight. Would you like to meet him and Wayne? I says, yeah, I'd love to. So I met Walter and Wayne that night. And from there on, I invited them to dinner at our place to meet my family.
Okay.
That was a smart move.
It's pretty
chat-
smart. That may have paid off a little
And
bit. Yeah.
chat about maybe representing Wayne. I said, well, he's only 15 years old. And I says, well, he's playing junior B. I would not go and watch anybody that was playing less than junior B.
Was that a principal or?
That was a principal.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if he was good enough to be playing against 20-year-olds and holding his own, I'm interested in this young man.
You're not
So
going to
you're talking
ignore
about
him,
dominant. Keep in mind, he's 15 playing against 20-year-olds.
Yes.
So he's not going to dominate like he would as a 20-year-old playing against 20-year-olds,
Yeah.
right?
However,
But he was good enough.
he was still pretty dominant. And I kept going to watch him. And then I had the invitation for dinner. And it's really ironic. After dinner, Walter's youngest son, Brent, and my youngest son were the same age. They wanted to go down in the basement and play a little bit of stick hockey down there.
Oh, nice.
But they came up shortly after, and my son had cut Brent coffee for stitches.
Oh, no.
We had to take him to the hospital.
Nearly the end of your
And I kind of
relationship.
says, "Oh, well, that's sure going to help."
Yeah.
Getting you a signature for. But that's how I first saw Wayne Gretzky, and then I followed him every Monday night. And this young man was just unbelievable. I mean, he played against 20-year-olds.
So he was playing for who at the time?
Seneca
he,
Nats.
he was playing for
Junior,
Seneca
yeah.
as well. Okay.
Yeah.
With
Murray.
With Murray. Okay,
Yeah,
I didn't realize
that's the
that.
only reason I went out.
Okay, so
to
you're going to
watch.
see Murray, and Wayne was on that team.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. And he just stood out to me, but he was like small, but he was puck sense was just way out of whack.
The intelligence.
He was incredible.
Now,
His
at
puck
this
sense.
point, obviously you're talking to his dad, Walter. Was it kind of clear, based on the fact that he was coming to you, that eventually you would be involved in his agency? Or
I think the thing that probably tempted him to be interested in me is because of the Tenali situation.
Right.
oh,
I really
Fascinating.
think Walter was saying to himself, well, I want a man that really is on my side
right,
all the way
right.
and not out for himself.
Right.
Okay, and he's coming to look at my young boy at this age, and I'm hearing and he's hearing stories. Well, the kid's pretty good, but he's too small.
Sure.
He's not going anywhere. And that's what I heard after I started to represent him. The more I was going to watch him play, and the more I was hearing from hockey experts,
Yeah.
like scouts that were going to draft. Kid's good, but he's too small, can't skate, not a good shot, not big enough. He's dominating here, but he won't dominate in the OHL.
No, because of this, was he being pursued by anyone else who was attempting? No, eh? So this was just your
There was nobody else.
wow.
Well, let me ask you this, because now let's put this in perspective. I'm thinking around that time, I mean, now everybody's become an agent. Like if they know a hockey player, they try and get their license, they become an agent so they can
Sure.
represent, because one player can make you rich.
Right.
How many I would say prominent agents were there in the game at the time?
There was probably maybe 6.
Right. Okay. So there wasn't flooded with everybody, and every
No.
one agency like CAA might have 5 or 10 guys representing players, and but there was like 5 or 6 at the time.
At the time, I think
who was the biggest one beside
Alan
you?
Eagleson,
Al
maybe.
Eagleson.
Yeah.
Okay. So it was you and
there was
Al,
a
and
guy named Kaplan out of Montreal.
right. So those are the big
Kaplan
ones.
and Kaminsky.
Okay.
And I don't know.
And the guys like Donnie Meehan came after.
Yeah, that was after.
Yeah. Okay.
And
All
Alan
right, so
Eagleson
that's
at the time, I believe, wasn't he also working for the NHLPA? Which I don't know that we
Yes,
get.
he was.
Yeah, I don't know
Oh,
that you
yeah.
get that very often anymore.
Yeah.
If you
Oh,
even
yeah.
could,
I don't think you
without it.
can.
Right.
I think there's
right.
a conflict there.
No, there was a conflict.
Yeah. Well,
Well, it turned out to be a pretty big.
as it turns
That's a whole other
That's a whole
episode.
Yeah, yeah.
episode.
So at this point, you're getting in tight with Wayne. He's
Wayne.
15 years old.
Yeah.
What happens over the next couple of years? How are people starting to knock on your door? What's his? The WHA is.
Oh no,
not yet.
Not at this level.
At what points do people start to realize, size aside, he's definitely going
Well, he
places?
was drafted number 3 in the OHL,
Right.
but I won't mention the name of the person and team that had the second pick that year. But I was watching.
Well, it's a common knowledge. You can mention it. You can just look it up.
For my curiosity,
I'm starting to forget his name, but he was.
Oh, okay. So, what was the team? Do you remember?
I think he was with Niagara Falls.
Okay.
That was
All right.
sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Niagara
he used
Falls.
to was one of the owners, I believe, of the Barrie Flyers at the time. But then he was the owner of Niagara Falls.
Okay.
And he didn't know this was a playoff game that Wayne's playing against. I think it was the Waterloo Siskins, who average age was practically 20.
Right.
And here's Wayne, and the average age for the Seneca Nats wasn't anywhere near. And I heard this fella behind me talking to. It was a full house at the small rink, and he says, "Well, I got the second pick, but I'm not picking that kid, Wayne Gretzky. I don't care how good they say he is. He's too small."
Do you remember who went before him?
I do.
Who would that have been?
Yeah, this young man deserved to probably be number 2 because he was playing Major A, and he was an underage kid, and you were allowed to play if your team had a Major Junior A team in that town where you lived. You were able to play as an underage, and that was Peterborough Pete's. And the young man's name was Steve Peters.
Yeah.
That's number 2 pick?
That's number 2.
That was the number 2 pick.
Who was number 1 that year?
And the number 1 pick deserved to be number 1 in all capacities was
Tom McCarthy.
Tom McCarthy, who was big, playing tier 2, a level up, was big and dominant and deserved to be the number 1 pick.
That's interesting. Just in my mind, I'm saying, who the hell passed up Wayne?
Yeah.
And there's two guys that did,
Yeah.
and 2 teams that did that could have been like gold. But anyway.
And, I was kind of like, he doesn't know who I am. I'm right underneath him. And I thought, well, what a mistake.
Yeah.
And it's probably at that one game. Oh, one of the things was he's not tough enough.
For Wayne.
One of those games against the Wilders, I'll never forget. These guys were beating the crap out of him. And to this day, Wayne will always say, "Oh, well, corners were for bus stops." That was so untrue.
Yeah.
He would go into corners.
Yes.
And he was getting manhandled by 20-year-olds, not only on their age, but they were big.
Was this so that they could prove a point, like you shouldn't be playing him?
Because he was.
Because he was a target.
That's right.
He could
was
be
a
had.
target.
And it was Oshawa first pick, Niagara Falls second.
Okay,
Yeah.
Oshawa.
Yeah.
They would have been put in jail for what they were doing
Sure.
to him on the ice.
Sure.
And I always would tell everybody, what's toughness? I says, I mean, I'm going to be tough because there's a bus coming and I'm going to stand in front of it.
Right.
Wayne Gretzky is going to evade.
He's got the talent to walk, skate circles around the guy.
And that's toughness.
Yeah.
He's not backing down. He's just outsmarting you.
For sure.
Right.
It's mental toughness, right?
Right.
Mental
Yeah.
tough.
Yeah.
And I'll go back to a player that I loved. His name was Dave Keon, who you mentioned.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
He was a small guy, but he'd come out of the corners with the puck.
Well, I'll tell you, just an aside.
Yeah.
Because you mentioned toughness. The first time I ever met Sidney Crosby's parents and Sidney Crosby was in Rimouski. And it was a game that hit TSN and all the broadcasts because Sidney, and he was a tough guy.
Yeah.
He's a guy that could go into every corner and still does, probably the best corner man I've ever seen, go in and come out with a puck by brute strength. And but he was being just killed. They were targeting him. And I know Troy, his dad, was just furious that they were letting this happen. Not to say that he was trying to protect his son. It was just brutal what was going on there, and they weren't calling it, and his teammates didn't come, at the time. So that was my first experience. And now you're talking about Wayne. Yeah. So those great players they're going after.
Yeah.
And Wayne didn't have Sidney's size or strength at the time.
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
But he never backed down.
No.
And I say that was, when I ever heard the word toughness, I just get so irritated.
It should mean more things than just being
there's
strong.
mental toughness and physical toughness.
That's right.
Exactly. Right. And thankfully he learned that part of the game. How much of that, after a game where he's just getting essentially picked on, I mean, you're talking to Walter. I'm assuming you're pretty close to the family at this point. What's going through Walter's head at this point?
Well, he's nervous about it, but but he's not going to tell Wayne, be careful. I never ever heard Walter say that.
Yeah.
But that was a big plus in my mind. But irritated me to hear these hockey people,
of course,
say he can't skate, not tough enough, doesn't have a big shot.
Well,
And
history's
he'll never be a good junior A player, let alone be a pro.
history's proven them wrong. I mean, how many years into his tenure in the OHL was it then becoming apparent? I mean, at this point, he's a couple of years have gone by. Is he now starting to get on people's radars? Are you now getting your door knocked on?
It took about 7 years for him to get on the NHL radar. Because I'm jumping ahead again.
Well, he's on Sault Ste. Marie at the time.
Sault Ste. Marie picked him number 3, which was Angelo Bambacco, who was a good hockey man.
Yeah.
Didn't believe in that crap that other people were saying.
Yep.
However, there was going to be a roadblock because Walter and Phyllis didn't want Wayne going that far up.
Oh,
There was a situation where Al Eagleson represented Reinhardt. He lived in Kitchener. And Reinhardt refused to go to Peterborough, who drafted him. And even Al Eagleson couldn't do anything to get him to play right away. So Peterborough sat him out for 2 months. So that was in my mind when Walter and Phyllis didn't want him to go to Sault Ste. Marie. I could understand the reason why.
sure.
It was too far away.
Right.
And they were worried about his schooling. And
Kind of like to see a few more games too.
Yeah, fair.
from what I got with the Reinhardt situation was, I told Angelo, look, you've signed him, I says, but he doesn't really want to come up. Here's what I'd like you to do. I'd like you to invite us up to show us your operation,
Yeah.
your schooling situation, and what you can do for this young player,
Sure.
being this far away from home. Angelo did that. We went up there, and Wayne was taken off to show him the surroundings and the situation with schooling and everything. And they still didn't want Wayne to go up there. They said to Walter and Phyllis, because of the situation that Reinhardt did, I really think it's wrong to at least give Sault Ste. Marie a chance.
Sure.
That if he goes up there and after 2 months, he doesn't like it and you don't like the situation, then I have a valid reason to try to get him out.
As
even
opposed
though
to
you were not allowed to trade your first round pick
Right.
at the time.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
This way, by doing that, I don't want Wayne to sit out 2 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
But let's go up there, give him a chance, and then I kind of have a valid reason. to
If
say,
it doesn't work out.
his schooling's not good, he's not happy, he's really this, and that. He knew some people up there that billeted him, and he was having an unbelievable year. And luckily, he stayed.
Yeah.
And he's 16 at the time. Is that correct?
He's 16 at
Yeah.
the time. However, it wasn't all glory because this new coach, towards the latter part of the season, I got a call from Walter. Guess Wayne's not happy. Why? He's doing great. He's playing great.
Yeah.
Team's doing good.
Yeah.
Coach is trying to take away his anticipation.
Take away his anticipation.
I said, you're kidding me. I says, Walter, you might as well take out his eyes.
Right.
He says, yeah, I'm really sure. I says, when is next game? What's his next game? He says it's in Sudbury. I says, okay, I'll fly up. I want to see for myself. So I flew up. I could see what Walter was saying.
Yeah.
Coach wanted to be,
Play a system that wasn't good for Wayne.
he wanted to be more most.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
One of these coaches
Yeah.
that, hey, I'm the headliner here, not you.
And I mean, Wayne became known for his saying, go to where the puck's going to be, not where it is, right? I mean, that is
So
his
that's
anticipation,
anticipation.
right? That's,
I mean, his puck sense
is what makes him.
Was the best anywhere.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly, because of those reasons.
Yeah.
And that's why he didn't get hit.
Yeah, exactly.
But he did get hit. And if I can just even go back to that, I had a player, Mike Bullard, who was a close friend of Wayne's,
Right.
because Mike Bullard was playing in Brantford, had a major junior A team at
Sure.
the time. And I said to Mike Bullard once, I said, you know, I'm getting irritated by people coming up to me and saying, Gus, is there a rule in the NHL? I'm going down to the NHL, let alone OHL, who had more goons in junior hockey
Yeah.
Sure.
ever.
Right.
One team had 6 on the Hamilton Fin Cups.
Oh, wow.
One team had 6 guys who could go to jail for what they did. Where'd I go? I'm coming off here.
Well, you're talking about the coach who was trying to take away his
And
anticipation.
So I
there.
saw it, and I talked to Angelo. I said, I don't usually like to
Involve yourself with the
involve
coaching.
myself
yeah.
in this, But Angelo didn't disagree.
Right.
And I said, well, Angelo, he's going to come home.
Yeah.
He's that unhappy. Angelo was able to manage to get him to finish the season
With that coach.
And they had a shot of winning the division.
Yeah.
And the same coach, I drove out to Ottawa. They were playing Ottawa in the semifinals or finals. I drive all the way out there, and then I see two of the best players that were on the Sault Ste. Marie team were dressed in their civvies, and the warm-ups on. Talked to Wayne after. He says, why weren't those guys playing?
Yeah.
It's an important game. You
Sure.
win this game and you go back to Sault Ste. Marie, you got a chance to beat them. He says, well, they were 5 minutes late for the bus.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
They didn't punish the kids. They punished your team.
The whole team.
And that was
That was his mentality.
And
I mean,
they-
it's the coach that wants to be the center of attention.
That's right.
Which is a shame. I mean, it could have been a whole different legacy for his junior career there. But so he spent some time in the Sioux, obviously, and one of the most
and loved it.
which is great to hear,
And loved
especially after maybe not even getting
We're
it
going
a
to try
shot.
and get one of Wayne's autographed Sault Ste. Marie jersey. I got 2 of them, and I'm not giving them
I was
up.
going to say,
and
those
they are
are-
gone through the roof price-wise, too.
There's,
So.
He loved the people. He loved Angelo Giambacco. Oh no,
Yeah.
that was just he's got to play.
Yeah,
You take away my playing.
of course.
Yeah.
Now, at what point in his time with the Sioux do you start to talk to him about, having to make an eventual decision on whether he's going NHL or going to the WHA? At this point, had the NHL opened up their signing opportunities to kids who are under 20 years old?
Well, what that situation did, in my thinking, the way hockey was played there in the OHL at the time,
Right.
with as many guys that were goons, and I shouldn't be that strong about it, but it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he was 17, and I had a call from John Bass. Here's where you get it.
Go again.
And he said, at that time, John had collected, I think, 5 to 7 players that were going to play for the Birmingham Bulls.
Sure. And John is a person that you were involved heavily with in the negotiations with John
When he
Tonelli.
was the Toros. Now
Yeah.
he's the owner of the Birmingham Bulls.
Right.
And John phones me up and he says, Gus, I've got 5 junior A players. I'm paying them $50,000 to play in the WHA next year. And they're going to play for me. They're already signed. He says, I'd like Wayne. I says, well, he's only 17. He says, well, I like Wayne and I like another player you got. And I said, oh, who's that? Mike Gartner.
Ooh.
And I'd like to win.
Yeah, apparently.
And I said, well, John, I've got to give this some thought and I got to talk to Walter. I talked to Walter and Wayne, and then I was going to talk to Mike Gartner and his parent. And then he's 17. The fact that he was getting beat up, the fact that what this coach almost did to him,
Changed his playing career forever.
it changed my attitude. Like, he's 17. He's still not big.
Right.
Well, I met with John in a Toronto restaurant. He says, well, I want those 2 players. 50. I says, John, I can't let them go for $50,000. It's impossible.
Yeah.
He says, well, all the other guys are 50,000. But I'll tell you what turned me off. It wasn't the $50,000. Is I was afraid these 2 players going to play there with 5 others, they might screw around.
Oh,
They got some money.
like lose their focus on the game.
That's right.
Oh,
At times.
because they were all going together
That's
at the same
right.
age. Oh,
At
wow.
the same age,
Wow.
with a few bucks in their pocket.
Fair.
In Birmingham, I
Didn't like the idea of it.
didn't tell John that.
Yeah.
It was money.
Yeah.
Money was a factor. Yes, I can't afford to pay. And I said, John, I can't. So they weren't going to go there in my eyes.
Sure.
And I felt bad because I really admired this guy.
Yeah.
He actually gave me the start. I wouldn't have been an agent without him. Right. And I just liked him a lot, but
So you felt bad because you weren't exactly honest with why Wayne wasn't going.
I wasn't honest with it.
And is there a reason why you were worried about telling him your fears of 6 young kids? Doesn't that, it seems reasonable.
Then he'd have some reason why it wouldn't happen
Oh,
that
fair,
way. I
fair,
would
fair.
think.
I don't know why, but before the conversation was over, John says, "Well, I've got a couple of people I can call in the
Sure.
WHA that might pay you what you want."
Sure.
So he was going to help you get those players to a different team.
Well,
and
think about
compete
it.
against him.
Well, think about it.
But
The
they got to
league-
keep the league strong.
The league does better if more players go over there.
Right.
I don't think they're as concerned about winning as they are
Well,
about becoming as
You
popular.
know who the guy I'm going to meet?
Tell me it's Nelson Scalbania.
Nelson Scalbania.
Amazing. I am so excited to get into some conversations about him.
He says, "Gus, I'll have Nelson give you a call." Nelson goes, "I don't know who he is."
Yeah.
He says, "Gus, he doesn't know anything about hockey." I kind of said under my breath, all the better.
Yeah. I think he was an engineer turned owner of a team. He had
Everybody
enough money.
wanted the high profile.
Yeah.
The reason was he was a competitor against Nelson Scalbania and was the Edmonton Oilers.
Oh, okay.
They were, I call them friendly enemies. They hated each other, but so each one was always trying to do each other.
Right.
So I called them friendly enemies.
So when you mentioned Edmonton, sorry, you said Scalbania, you mean Pocklington?
Yeah. Nelson Scalbania and Peter Pocklington were friendly enemies.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Because Peter was the owner of the Oilers.
Right.
Okay. Fair.
So I'm talking to Nelson Scalbania at the hotel, and he doesn't know anything about hockey. And next thing I know, John is high on this kid, said this kid's really good, and he's going to play for Indianapolis. He owns the Indianapolis team.
Right.
I said, I'd like to negotiate with you on it. But goes in his pocket, comes up with these $100 bills. He said, "Okay, I want you to bring Walt, his father and his mother and you and me and to my house in BC tomorrow." I said, "We can't have Walter. Walter works,
Yeah.
and I kind of got commitments." I said, "We can't do that tomorrow." He says, "Okay, come out Saturday." Gives me these $100 bills, and I phone Walter. I says, "Walter, guess where we're going?" "Where?" He says, "Well, we're going to Vancouver." You, me, Phyllis, and Wayne.
So
Wow.
he knows at this point though that the conversation with John about joining that's over and done with. He knows
John's
that.
the
right?
one that phoned Nelson about Wayne.
And Walter was aware of that at this point.
No.
Okay.
No,
Okay.
not till I had the meeting with
Okay.
Nelson Scalbania. Then when I phoned him about, "Well, we're going to
We're
Vancouver
going.
on Saturday, you okay?" He says, "Yeah." He says, "Gus, Phyllis and I don't like to fly."
Oh.
I says, "Neither do I." So we get on this plane and we get picked up on a Rolls Royce by Nelson
wow.
Scalbania. And we're going to this mansion that's overlooking this view like you wouldn't believe
On the West Coast.
on the West Coast. And Nelson says, he says, "Has Wayne got any runners?" He says, I said, "Well, I don't know." He says, "Well, I want to take him for a run."
Oh.
"Wayne, did you bring any shorts and running shoes or anything?" He says, "Yeah, I do. I have, Gus." He says, "Well, Walter wants to take you for a run."
Or Nelson.
What Nelson does.
And
Yeah.
Nelson. And Nelson, and he said, I said, "Go for a run." He said, "Okay." Anyways, they go for a run.
Yeah.
And they're coming back. I don't know how long it took. But Nelson's puffing, and he apparently is in very good shape.
Right.
And Wayne beat him. So he was really impressed with that.
Oh, wow.
Right off.
Doesn't know anything about hockey, but he knows about running.
He knows how good a
But
shape he's
that
in.
was
Yeah.
part of his test.
Oh,
Sure.
really?
Yeah, that was part of his test on this kid right off the bat.
Yeah, I've never heard these stories even from Wayne. So
No,
Oh,
I
no.
mean,
Yeah.
he wouldn't maybe even remember. Well,
Well,
Wayne will
he'll
remember everything.
He'll remember
He
that.
remembers every little
He'll
detail,
remember
but he
that.
doesn't talk about it.
No. he doesn't.
so what was it ultimately that had you deciding, okay, this guy's flashing a lot of money. He's asking me down.
Well, I
to
don't
the
know
West
what he was
Coast.
flashing, and I had no idea what I was even asking for at the time.
Sure.
But I did come up with some figures. So we had dinner that night. We negotiated a little bit. I threw out some figures. Well, I want 250,000 signing bonus, and I want I forget the numbers.
Sure.
But anyways, it come up to 785 for 4 years.
Okay. Now we're talking.
He says, well, Gus, I got to sleep on this. You know, tell you what, we're going to take you tomorrow. I want to show you my offices and this and that. And I said, okay. So came back the next day. I said, you know, we haven't changed. In fact, I think we need to add a little more to it.
Wow.
Good for you.
That's some
It's not
backbone.
in Nelson's favor to be showing him all the Rolls Royce and all that.
And these expensive paintings.
Right. You can afford that. You can afford, my boy.
him. Yeah.
And that's why I said there has to be something added. Everything in the figures where it says, but you got to give me one painting. And I'm thinking, if that painting's worth that much today, how much is it worth down the road?
Yeah.
Wow.
He says, Gus, I want to do this press conference in Edmonton, not in Vancouver. Because he wants to do it in front of Peter Puckett.
Wow. But it's worth noting as well that the Oilers at this point in time were in the WHA.
Yeah.
They're the only team that came over to the
they were
NHL
in
with
the
both.
WHA.
Yeah.
Actually, Wayne was turned down by Winnipeg.
Yeah.
The GM made a huge mistake.
Yeah.
Anyways, I was hoping for the painting, but I was going to get my $250 signing bonus and the 4-year contract.
Yeah.
And it was what's the word? You said personal contract.
Personal services contract.
That's what.
Yeah.
That's what he was going to give us, a personal service.
Okay.
So if he never played a game, Wayne would have to maybe wash the deck of his yacht.
But he'd still get paid.
But he'd still get it.
paid.
Right.
He agreed to that, but not the painting.
That's too bad.
I was pissed.
That would have been a great.
He knew
painting.
that was a throw-in that he could negotiate out, I'm sure.
So we're going to get that $250 signing bonus, all that kind of money, instead of that $50,000 a year for
Right.
3 or
From
4
Birmingham.
years.
Right. Right. And he doesn't have the other 6 players to worry about
and
dragging
I'm
him
just
down.
putting one player there,
Yes.
not Mike Gartner.
Right. Right.
So we're flying back the next day, flying out to Edmonton, and it's handwritten.
The contract.
The contract's handwritten. You can see it.
I think it was.
I got a book.
I think it was at his restaurant. I'm not sure.
And it was in the Hall of Fame. I made the Hall of Fame for 4 months.
Oh, there.
Hey,
you go.
there you
I
go.
was so tickled.
That's
to
amazing.
see that contract there, and it said Gus Badali.
That's fantastic. Now, in spite of this signing, this enormous signing that you had negotiated, Wayne only played 8 games in Indianapolis. Yeah. What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, Scalabrini was not drawing anything even with the games.
Okay.
But I got to tell you about the handwritten contract.
Oh, I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Well, the handwritten contract was, I read it, and I'm not a lawyer, and I'm reading it, and we're in the air at the time. There's one clause in here I don't really like. Excuse me. I felt there was a clause where he could get out of it.
Nelson could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought he could get out of it if it was signed that way. I said, I'd like this one clause taken out. Okay, but I can't rewrite it. I didn't bring my glasses. I said, well, I can't do it either because I get motion sickness. Okay, Walter, he says, guess I'm already white knuckling it. I know.
Oh, because he's afraid of flying. He's not.
So
Yeah.
I said, Wayne, you're the only one left.
Wow.
Oh, no.
Really? So that's how Wayne.
Wayne
literally wrote his own contract.
Rewrote the contract.
Wow.
Rewrote the contract with that clause out.
Imagine they'd invented whiteout at this point. That would have saved some time.
But I also we could get out of it, but we would still get $50,000. Because I said, I'm not a lawyer, Nelson. So when I give this to my lawyer, I want to be sure it's valid.
Sure.
And he said, okay. But we were guaranteed if we changed our mind, you'd still get $50,000 for that trip.
Hey, that's a great clause to have.
Gus.
So we're flying back. We get into Edmonton, do the press conference, and then we're going to fly back. Walter and Phyllis were getting flown back to Toronto. Wayne and I were getting flown to Indianapolis.
Right.
And sure enough, it's funny but not funny. There's a lightning storm.
Oh, no.
And I thought, I knew this was too good to be true.
Wayne's not a good flyer
No,
either.
I know that.
It runs in the family.
Wayne was not a good flyer at all.
Oh.
And that's how that contract turned
That
out.
is
that's amazing.
fascinating. All the ins and outs.
And after eight games, Winnipeg was turned down the the offer that
Yep.
was offered them because the GM said it was he's not good enough.
Oh, wow.
And
Now-
that's where Peter Pocklington and the Edmonton Oilers go.
So from there, though, he's in Indianapolis. They're not making a go of it. How does the transaction happen from Indianapolis to the Oilers?
They had to pick up that contract.
So did Nelson phone and say, do you want the contract, or did they?
Yeah.
So he doesn't like Pocklington.
No.
They do the press conference in Edmonton just to stick it in his ear.
Yep.
Then they take him back to Indianapolis. It doesn't work out.
Yeah.
And then he phones Pocklington and says, you want to take this guy off my hands?
Yep. That's why I call them friendly enemies. Because apparently they would play racquetball together, very competitive, but they were. That's why I call it friendly enemies.
That's amazing. Can I ask this question, because I don't know if you know about this rumor. Do you know anything about the rumor of the Racers with Scalbanian, Winnipeg and Edmonton, and a backgammon game? Have you ever heard about these rumors?
Yeah, I've heard the rumors.
So can we just tug on this a little bit? If
All
there's nothing to it, then we can let it go. But the rumor is that Nelson had a backgammon game that would essentially include the rights to get Wayne Gretzky between the Edmonton Oilers and the Winnipeg Jets. Edmonton won. But one thing that actually interests me now that you mentioned the earlier conversation is part of the rumor is that one of the things that was up as collateral was a painting. So maybe there's something to it.
There you go.
I didn't hear the painting.
No, you didn't, Dave. Is there any truth to the rumor
No,
of the
but I heard
backgammon
I
game?
heard it wasn't true.
Okay.
I
Okay.
heard it wasn't true.
Now, there's that famous photo after, it was Indianapolis, of Eddie Mio and Wayne, and who else was in that
Yeah, I
plane?
know. I can't
And
remember
they were
his
all
name.
getting on the plane together to head to Edmonton.
Luckily, Eddie had a credit card. The plane flight was $10,000.
Oh, wow.
He says, "My card is already maxed out. I think I got $1,000."
Oh, wow.
Something like that.
Well, there was more money to be made all around the thing. Now, just so people don't think that I'm just throwing whatever against the wall to see if it sticks, Larry Gordon, who was the Oilers GM in '78, said he was there during the backgammon game. So I don't know if he's telling tales. I don't know if he just likes the aura of this being a rumor, but the concept of that is fascinating and kind of works with that quirkiness of Scalbania and just the kind of fly by their seat of the pants.
Well, I'll see
element of
Wayne
the
next
WHA.
month maybe, and I'll ask him whether he knows anything about
Fair.
it.
Maybe he'll.
I heard it wasn't true, but I don't know.
Well, you would know better than we would. So all I know is that Google tells me whatever I want it to tell me. So
Yeah, tell him about that.
So now he's off to Edmonton, which is very timely because he's only 17 or 18 at the time?
17.
17. So now he's got a head start getting all the stats going, because
Sure.
if he had them in the WHA, because they never gave Gordy really any credit for WHA stats.
Yeah.
Otherwise, he'd be greater. But
Well,
it's NHL stats only that really
Well, no,
count.
because the Oilers were still in the WHA,
Right,
yeah.
and then but it was basically the year that this happened that it switched over to the NHL.
So he's in by 18.
yes,
right?
yes.
So-
I mean that's a great story, and obviously Wayne's career has
had an
flourished
okay
since
career.
then. He's done okay. You Gus, are you still were you involved when Gretzky eventually signed his 21-year contract
Yes.
with
Yeah,
the Oilers?
My lawyer had done that.
Because I didn't realize that it was that long of a contract. Now, you guys did a good thing of putting in there a 10-year renegotiation
Yeah,
clause,
well,
but
the other reason that I wasn't worried about it didn't matter. The WHA wasn't going to survive.
right.
So I wasn't worried about the length
Sure,
or anything
sure.
about it. And I thought, if they survive,
You've got it.
it'll get increased. My main thing always was he was never going to be broke.
Right.
Right.
That, if
And
he
they
got
don't have an
hurt,
out.
if
Sure.
he got hurt the next day, that was always my concern about not being greedy. Was you got enough here? If you're not stupid, you're going to be okay.
Right.
If you get hurt, you don't play another game.
I mean, that also speaks to this we were talking about, to your credit, that method of signing a contract, saying we'll take a little bit less, but you need to guarantee the contract. Even if the player gets injured, a lot of agents may instead say, no, we want the most amount of money possible because that's my signing bonus and this and that. I think it just speaks more to how the best agents out there are looking out for the best interest of the players, especially at a young age there. Now, with Wayne, it wasn't obviously the only person that you had done work with.
Well, Mike Gartner.
Yeah.
As I say, there was the other
great
player. Edmonton wanted him. I was asking $200,000 a year for him.
Okay.
And Edmonton couldn't, believe it or not, we're offering $190.
And they couldn't bump it to...
I had to talk to Cincinnati.
Oh.
And Cincinnati were going to pay me $200 American. That's why he went there.
Yeah.
Oh.
He went there to...
Now, how did you start to expand your player base? Obviously, one of the other famous names you were involved with early on was Mario Lemieux, and I wanna ask your opinion on something that happened very early in Mario Lemieux's career. You talked about Wayne Gretzky, and when he was drafted, he didn't necessarily want to go play in the Sioux.
He was never drafted
in the Sioux. But the idea of a draft and your responsibility to a team when you're drafted, famously Mario Lemieux, when he was drafted by the Penguins, didn't go up for the ceremonial handshake. And I've heard rumors that you had a lot to do with that piece of advice. Are you able to tell some of that
I
story?
definitely had. It was my advice.
Was it really?
Not an easy advice to sleep on.
Sure.
Oh yeah.
Why don't you can you give some context of maybe what was going on pre-draft?
Mario was just, even though he didn't have a good Memorial Cup in Kitchener,
Right.
he was the number one player. He was just phenomenal.
Nobody questioned that. Yeah.
Well, this day and age, I mean, it was a no-brainer. You get $3 million and you get all these bonuses.
Sure.
In those days, you got nothing.
Yeah.
I'm negotiating with, here again, I started something. I talked to Eddie Johnson prior to a week before the draft. And I'm in Montreal, and I said, Eddie, are you going to pick Mario number one? Oh, good. What do you say? Let's have a coup here. Let's do the contract now.
Yeah.
And then you announce he's number one and he's signed. Yeah, okay. No. We started negotiating. Pittsburgh has no money.
Okay. Yeah.
The owners are football people, 49ers.
Right.
So it got nasty during negotiations. I'm asking this much money. The kid is that dominant. He's the number one. They're offering lower. Eddie, this is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's number one.
Sure.
I'm not asking the world here, but at that time they thought it was the world. Anyways, it got real nasty. They weren't coming up, but I had told Mario they're wanting to underpay you. Like, it's not right what they're offering, and we have no place to go.
Right.
I'm going to recommend, you know what? Don't go. I'm going to tell them, don't go to the table.
Huh.
I'm going to tell them, they can tell them you're not coming to the table. Let some other team take them. And there was no animosity that I wanted them to go to Montreal. I just was so upset
with the way the negotiations were happening.
Like I would say, if it was a Swedish guy, they can say, well, I'm going back to Sweden.
He didn't have that option.
You can go back to Laval.
Right.
No leverage.
No leverage. And that was just totally unfair. So my last kick at the cat was for Eddie. And I told him, he's not going to come to the table. I said to Mario, his parents only spoke French. I really never spoke to the parents that much. So he said, Gus, I'll do what you say. And my last kick of the cat for Eddie was, look, Eddie, Pittsburgh's putting 7,000 fans in this ring. I'll go down to what his figure was like. At that time, it was 300 and a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And 500,000 was high.
Yeah.
That's what I think
Right.
Brian Trottier was making, and those guys were making.
Sure.
And they were at 3 and a quarter. I said, they're getting 7,000 fans. I'll go to 3 and a quarter, but I want $1 a seat for every fan over 7,000.
Oh, wow. Wow.
That's brilliant.
That's fantastic.
And he lost it.
Whoa.
I said, Eddie, if he puts more bums in the seat, then you got the money to pay him.
Exactly.
If he doesn't, then
you
you
don't.
got to figure you were asking for.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just want him to be paid.
What he brings to the organization.
Those asses are put in the seat.
Wow, that's. I didn't realize that was the
He-
tipping point there.
And he went
nuts on that.
He went nuts on that.
Did he ever agree to it?
No. Well, 3 days after the draft was over, because then I advised Wayne not to go to the table.
Or Mario.
They had this part-time scout from Montreal. He comes up in the morning of the draft. He leans over me to talk to Mario. And he says, Mario, you have no choice. When Eddie mentions your name, you got to get up and go. I wanted to punch him right there. They announce his name. I'm sitting beside Mario. It seemed longer, but it was probably 30 seconds.
Probably felt like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It didn't seem long enough.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah.
And he got up. And I'm saying to myself, hey, that's his opinion. He's entitled to make that decision.
Sure.
So he walks down. He doesn't walk to the table. He just walks right to the reporters are.
Oh.
He didn't go to the table.
So he doesn't do the ceremonial handshake.
Yeah.
He just walks
Yeah.
straight past to the
He
reporters.
does. And then 3 days later, I got a call and met Eddie Johnson at a motel outside in Queen Elizabeth,
Yep.
Queen Elizabeth way. And I got like 500,000.
Okay, so he bumped it, but it's an interesting thing because full circle, when Sidney Crosby got drafted, now Mario's an owner in Pittsburgh,
Yeah.
right? And I remember going down there for one of the first games, and if you recall, they were trying to sell the team at the time,
Yeah.
and they were getting the offers weren't anything exceptional, so they're waiting for a good offer. This is the way I understand the story, but I know I went down to Pittsburgh to see Sidney play, and you could grab a seat anywhere in the building.
Right.
The cab driver didn't know who he was. And I said,
Yeah.
you're about to have a really good hockey team. And they go, yeah, you got this kid coming in and he's going to be great.
Yeah.
But Mario's part of the team. Now Mario's still an owner.
Right.
Yeah.
He never sold the team. But if Sidney had that kind of deal, he would, what he's made that team worth on his shoulders, which is what Wayne did, which is what Mario did. And so it's almost like profit share.
That's fantastic. It is.
Well,
it really is. Yeah.
But that was brilliant because that brought him back to the table with the right amount.
Yeah. He says, if you think I'm going to start a trend like that,
Well, he was probably very smart not to do that because that
could have been more fair.
That is very fair, but that is not.
Well,
what,
at least
what a conservative kind of ownership is going to want to do. Right?
He's probably thinking give an inch, and then what are they going? And then it's an element of concessions. It's a percentage of the jersey. You know what I mean?
That would have set a huge bad precedent.
I get where
for
he's
the
coming from,
NHL
but it's a
at the
great
time.
idea to basically say, okay, if you don't have money, then and you're worried about money, here's your solution. Now put up or shut up, right?
I'm going to jump around here, but Mario's number 1, and I got the number 2 pick, Kirk Muller.
Oh, geez, Kirk.
And this is funny. I'm negotiating with the owner, not Max McNabb, who is a hockey man.
Right.
I know a real nice guy besides being a hockey man. I'm negotiating with a very nice man. The owner was very nice, knew nothing about hockey. I'm asking fair money, I believe. And he throws at me, well, I paid Ray Knight $75,000 for this and that, and he didn't play well, and I'm not going to pay you this much money for this hockey player because Ray Knight didn't pay, do what he was told, what he was supposed to for the money I paid him. And I said, this is a hockey player. We're not talking baseball.
Yeah.
Right.
That's all he ever kept talking to me about was, I said to Max, I can't get anywhere with this guy.
Yeah.
He's talking to me about
Baseball players.
yeah, this guy not making his $75,000
Sure.
value. I just can't negotiate with him. I got the guy removed.
No way. I mean, you've been through so much at this point
Yeah.
between the WHA,
So,
the NHL, and all the contract negotiations.
a week or two later with Max, and we had a contract.
Right.
Well, so from it shows the influence that you had. I mean, we mentioned at the top, you being very humble about the influence that you've had over the league from the early days of having Sault Ste. Marie rethink their coaching strategy to the way that the Pittsburgh Penguins organization offered contracts to rookies to maybe see another staff change over at other teams. I mean, it's kind of nonstop, the amount of influence that you've had, and again, kind of just scratching the surface.
Well, I was just going to say, because we are running short on time, but we've covered off how a hockey player gets involved with it, and a super agent. Like Gus was one of the first super agents in the game, from a gas station ownership to a coaching job to helping a player out to becoming an agent to becoming a super agent.
Right.
And we've covered off some of the players, John Tonelli and Wayne Gretzky, that he's been involved with. But there's so much more. And I think at some point,
a part 3 eventually.
There will be a part 3 that we got to get Gus back. He's been so gracious about his time.
Yeah.
We did a double show today.
We did.
But it's been awesome.
Gus, do you have any plugs or anything going on you want to tell people about? Do you have a book in the works? We got to get a book about you. Yeah.
You and I are going to talk.
You know what?
Have you ever done a book?
No, I've been asked to do it. You know what? I've given it a lot of thought, and I don't want to put anybody under the bus, so I don't want.
I gave you a copy of Eddie Shack's book. As we're talking about this, it's light, it's easy. You and I are going to talk because it's as easy as doing this podcast. You've got such a great story to tell. You got to get it down. For now, I'm glad that we've got it here on our podcast and nobody else has it in a book.
Well, think about it. There's a way to tell your story without throwing anyone. Nothing we've said today puts anyone to shame. I mean, the stories that you're talking about are just stories of the NHL at that point in time.
Let me say, like Eddie Johnson, I mean, he was doing his job.
No, of course.
Eddie and I are good friends. I go down to Mario's fantasy camps, and Eddie and I, we're and I never ever hold a grudge with those guys.
But you know what? That's the whole hockey mentality.
Yeah.
They beat each other up through 4 rounds of the playoffs, and at the end of the day, after hitting and fighting and doing whatever they need to do to win a game, they shake hands.
Yeah.
It's part of the job. Your job as an agent, their job as management, and when Eddie was playing the game, he would have been on the other side of that coin. So there's no hard feelings there, I'm sure.
Because I knew they didn't have any money.
Yeah.
Well,
because I knew what was going on there with the,
it was 7,000 butts in seats.
So I wasn't blaming him when he lost it. He lost it, but
no, he's got to do his job. But I started by saying, when you mentioned that $1 per seat, I thought that was brilliant. But then on the other hand, I think he was very smart not to take that deal, right? So he was doing his job. You were doing your job. You got to represent the player. He's got to represent the team with what you have to work with. Yeah. And that's what it's all about.
Well, it's been about quite a bit. We've covered a ton of topics here. Gus, thanks so much for giving us that extra hour for the part 2 of this. And hopefully at some point we can get you in for a part 3, because I have a list of questions I'd still love to run through. Gus, thanks again for joining us on this podcast. For Brian Aaronworth, president of Frameworth Sports Marketing, and myself, Mikey Aaronworth, this is us signing off.
And I haven't even mentioned Paul Coffey.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we made it to the end of yet another episode. Thanks again so much for joining us. You can find videos of all of our episodes on YouTube by searching the Sign Off Podcast. You can also follow us on Twitter at Frameworth Sport or Instagram at Frameworth Sports. And hey, if you're not sick of me yet, you can find me on Twitter over at Retrograde Mikey, or you can always find me embarrassing myself over on Instagram at Aaronworth. The Sign Off is a proud product of Fadoo Productions and Sad Styles Productions. Executive producers Mikey Aaronworth and Andrew Bascom. Until next week, this is Mikey Aaronworth, signing off.
Furnished by Sad Styles Productions.
Get into it!